All right.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, Vito.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Savon. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm excited to hear about your work with 449 Recovery. It's a mental health treatment center, not an addiction treatment center. So curious to hear about your work with that. But it's been decades since we talked. Since I've seen you, Vito and I went to high school together.
That's right. And what a great time we had together back in the day, right? The 80s were something special,
Yes.
But yes, since then, the journey has been very different than when I was in high school and when we were all together. And, so if you'd like, I can just get into basically from where we left off 30 some years ago and catch you up a little bit. I'd love to share that interesting story.
Yeah. So share your background. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So as you know, in high school, I was part of the DARE program. I was actually co-president with a good friend of ours, Carolyn Schimmel. We were presidents of this DARE club to, just say no. And I had never touched a mind-altering substance other than the occasional sip of wine at the house with my family, never really my thing. Went through high school, got through college. And my senior year of college, I found that I was getting weight issues. And it started with those herbal pills that made you feel not hungry, and so I decided to, take those pills and I would get wired out, and after several months of that, a friend of mine said, hey, you know what? I've got this other stuff that you could do, which at the time was called crank. And he said, do a little bit of this and you'll be losing weight in no time. And I was like, okay, graduating college, I'm good to go here. I felt like when I graduated college that I had arrived, you know what I mean? And life was good. And I was going to have just this amazing career. And I had accomplished everything I needed to become a full grown adult. So I started, that was my first soiree into mind altering substances was crank. Very quickly found out that was not a good thing and, kind of got off of it and basically started smoking marijuana, casually at first and quickly found that I had a personality flaw, if you will, to the point where I didn't do anything just a little bit. And I could trace it back, long before I ever tried a substance. I always had this personality where I was all in and to the point of obsession. We were in band together and I didn't just do high school band. I got involved with drum and bugle corps and I went over the summer I would travel across the country with these bands and I was hardcore into it, 110%, all out nonstop. And didn't know at the time that was kind of an addict behavior. You know what I mean? And
the obsessiveness.
Yeah, the obsessiveness, right? And it was also, addict behavior when it came to my parents and my family and friends, where I would lie to my parents a lot, to get what I want. I would manipulate and I would lie. Again, not knowing until way down the road that, hey, you know what? These are addict behaviors as well. All stemmed in mental health issues that we could talk about a little later. So, as I went through this experience in the early 90s, I found that, my life was unraveling a little bit. So I pulled away from, the amphetamine stuff and just smoked weed, and life was good again. And I was relatively successful. I became an instructor, teaching A+ PC programming back in the day, got paid really well and things were good, got married, habitual marijuana smoker at the time. And everything was good until our first daughter was born and my wife said, you need to stop smoking weed. So I said, no problem. And I quit, right? Cold turkey, no programs, nothing needed. I just, turned it off easy enough. I'm not an addict. Well, about 9 months went by, and I was working at at the time I was working at a paint manufacturing company, Sherwin-Williams, and there was a guy there that had methamphetamines, and it had evolved since the last time I did it, from biker crank stuff to this crystal meth stuff, this really high potency, you know what I mean, like next level stuff. And of course I got very interested, and I started doing that because I couldn't smoke weed anymore. I told my wife I wouldn't smoke weed. I didn't say anything about this, and how is she going to know? You know what I mean? But again, that behavior, that mental health issue of my obsessiveness about things never left. And so naturally, it was not a long time before it began to rule my world, and take over everything, So moving forward a little bit down the timeline, my son came 18 months later, and I was still doing these substances. Primarily now, I was pretty heavy on meth, and I was not able to really maintain jobs. And so I got into what I like to call fundraising. And that was basically me and a friend of mine would go online. We'd do a little research and find out loss prevention policies for different stores. And we would go in and basically shoplift things strategically, so that we could get away with it. And we always did. And I would sell it to a guy who would buy all my stuff, and I would buy my dope. And then I would go home and give my wife some money and lie to her about how I made the money. I told her that I was twirling a sign for Sprint and they were paying me cash, which she completely didn't believe. She knew I was full of crap. But, we went ahead and played that game for a while until things really became unmanageable. So
she didn't want to confront. She didn't want to confront you, even though.
Oh, she confronted me many times. I just denied, as any good addict would,
I see.
Until there was just no more denying it, And then along the way, she found me in really bad situations of things that I was doing and the way I was acting, and I was always in complete denial until I started getting so high for so long that I would go out just for fun and start fundraising by myself. No more partner, just me, really high, going into stores and taking stuff and spending hours in the stores till the policeman would actually literally walk into the store and be like, yo, come with us. And I'm like, what did I do? I mean, I'm not even outside the store. They're like, yeah, but we've been watching you for an hour and a half. We see that you've got like things in your pocket. You need to come with us, And so I got arrested, not once, not twice, but thrice, 3 different times, shoplifting. And actually I had enough stuff on me that it became, a bigger shoplifting. It was petty theft versus just shoplifting. And so all the while I thought I could just quit doing drugs. But I would try, and I'd get a couple days or a week, and I couldn't stay sober. So after the third time that I was arrested, I was on probation, and this is in Orange County, and I lived in the Inland Empire. If you don't know where that is, it's about 30 or 40 miles north of Orange County. So I would drive into my probation officers all the time, check in with them, and of course I was still getting high. Didn't stop me at all. And when I was at probation, they told me they were doing a transfer of my case because it was Inland Empire. Mind you, this was 2 years into probation now. And I was like, well, wait a minute, why are you drug testing me to get a transfer? And they're like, well, because everybody gets drug tested when you get a transfer of probation. I had no idea about this. And on the way in, I had actually been getting high, So I was obviously really nervous. And so I said, you know what, I can't pee. And they said, no problem, go out there, drink some water. You've been the model probation, client, go ahead and drink some water, come back in. So went to my car because as a good addict, I was always prepared. I had a synthetic urine pack that I strapped to my chest, and I put the tube down my shirt and down my pants, and I went with the probation officer. I said, I'm ready to pee. So I go into the urine, into the bathroom, and I start trying to pee, and nothing was coming out of this tube. So I was like, you know what? I think I need a little more water. And he's like, go ahead and get some more water. So I go out there, and I'm fiddling with a little cotter pin on the hose, and all of a sudden it decides to open up. And I mean, it just like a big, huge puddle, like right there in my pants. So I clipped it up again, and I was like, and I was very thin at the time because I was doing so much math. I just covered it up with my shirt, and I went back in and said, I'm ready to pee now. Went back in there and released the cotter pin again, and the sack was empty. So I was like, you know what? I can't pee. And he's like, you know what? Don't worry about it. We'll go ahead and just do a swab of your mouth, and we can test you that way. I was like, okay. But when I went in there, I had also smoked marijuana on the way in, so I had cotton mouth. So they tried to swab me, and there was nothing, right? They're like, yeah, you're manipulating the test, so just come in tomorrow, and you're going to report jail. Like, what? I had never been to jail. Holding tanks when I got caught shoplifting, but never jail. They're like, yeah, you're going to jail for 30 days. And so I freaked out, went home, started drinking, water and servo and vinegar and everything else.
You're trying to everything to flush your system. Yeah.
And flush my system. I walk in and I'm like, well, I can pee now, And he's like, no. I told you you're going to jail. So I was cuffed up and I wore glasses at the time. They took my glasses. I was blind. And they said, you're going to jail. And so I went to jail for a 30-day term. And after 20, I had a court date. And they're like, wow, you've had three different incidents here. And according to you, it's because you're an addict, And I was like, yeah, well, I was high. And they're like, yeah, well, because of that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to mandate, along with your probation violation, which is a felony, by the way, we're going to go ahead and mandate that you do either 6 months of treatment or 6 months in jail. And I was like, I'm doing my addict math in my head. And I'm like, well, if I do 6 months of jail, that'll be 3 months and they'll let me out, So I said, yeah, I think I'll do the jail. They're like, no, you don't understand. You're either going to go to jail and then do treatment, or you can just do treatment. So I said, all right, I'm going to find a treatment center. You know what I mean? And so in my searchings, I found a program called Ocean Hills Recovery. And Ocean Hills Recovery, I hate to do this, but I actually had one other stint in recovery prior to that. And it was a Christian program. And I'd gone to this Christian program for 30 days after my first arrest. I hate to do that. I'm sorry, Savant.
Oh, that's fine.
I have to share this. I went to this 30-day program, and it wasn't a 12-step program. It was a one-step program. One step, Jesus Christ, you're healed. You know what I mean? God's power, you'll be fine. And so I did the 30-day program. It was amazing. I was actually baptized again at the program. And I really felt like it was changing my life. And my pastor there, I sat with him at day 29 and I said, can I stay and volunteer for some time? Because I love this place and I want to give back. Pastor, who I didn't know at the time had a pastoral gift, said, no, you can't stay. And I was like, why not? And he said, because you're not done. And I was like, who is this guy? Are you kidding me? I am done. You know what I mean? Like, I'm totally done. I have the Lord on my back now. I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, there's no problem. And so he sent me home, and it lasted about 2 weeks, and then I started smoking weed again. And 3 weeks after that, I was back into my old habits of doing meth again. And that's when it escalated, got much worse, and got arrested 2 more times. So that was just a little nugget that I'll refer to later. But that was my first soiree into recovery, one step. And so it didn't really work out, So this time, this third arrest, this last chance by my wife before she divorces me and my kids would be gone, and my parents were ready to disown me.
Wow.
This is my last chance, and they said, you better make it work. It's 6 months of mandatory treatment. We lived in Chino. This was in Dana Point, a full 52 miles away. And it was inpatient, residential, mandatory, court ordered for 6 months. So I go to this program, and I took it very seriously. This program introduced me to the 12-step of recovery program, and I realized at that point that why the one-step program didn't work out for me, because even though I was a believer and with all of my heart, I believed I wanted to stop. And believe me, many times I prayed that, Lord, please remove this from me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm still doing this. I don't know why I'm still in my addiction, but I know you have a reason, Lord. Please just remove this from me. It just wouldn't go away. I found out that the reason I wasn't having real success was that, as Paul says, faith without works is death, right? So my works turned out to be the 12 steps of recovery. You know what I mean? That kept me busy. It kept me into my program of recovery. Still not understanding yet, because it was just a straight 12-step program, the mental health component of my big problem. You know what I mean? But by working the 12 steps of recovery with my sponsor, who happened to be a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he was also the clinical director at Ocean Hills, and he was also the guy who eventually, the day after I finished treatment, got me the job, explained to me that, there is mental health issues here. And he helped to open my eyes to the fact that addiction is not a standalone disease. And it is a disease. People want to argue all the time that it's not a disease. It absolutely alters your thinking. It absolutely alters your brain, like any other disease that would alter parts of your body. It is a disease that that is a mental health thing, not just a substance abuse thing. And so he helped open my eyes to that. So I graduated the program, and like I said, day one that I got out, they hired me, and I started answering phones. At the time, we had 3 clients at the facility where I got sober, and it was it held 20 or 25 clients with a couple houses with 8 or 10 beds in them type deal. And I started answering the phones, and by the grace of God, within 60 days, we had 39 clients in a program that at the time when I started could only hold a maximum of 24. They had to buy more houses. We became wildly successful. And really I did it by sharing my story of recovery and explaining how it worked for me and how it could work for you, but working for this program, I did not agree with the way the owner would reinvest profits, or the lack thereof, in my opinion. And Rodney, the gentleman who was my counselor, my sponsor, my dear friend, he agreed that we were not working for the right guy. And so after about 1.5 years working for Ocean Hills, I decided, and Rodney decided, we wanted to start our own program. And so we needed the money, obviously. And my parents, my mom was gracious enough to be our angel investor, giving us our initial investment to open a program. We had to come up with a name. And my partner, who was 24 years sober at the time, he came up through the 3rd edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And he was in his addiction, he was a crackhead, and from Oakland. And so he had anger issues, and they always told him to read page 449 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, 3rd edition. That page 449 turned out to be the page on acceptance being the key to all of our problems today, because you can't change people, places, or things around you. You can only change how you either react or respond to something, right? You need, when a doctor tells you, hey man, we gave you this medication, your body's reacting, that's very bad. When a doctor gives you good feedback on the medication, he says your body is responding well. So page 449 of the third page, the third edition of Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, explains to you acceptance is the key to all of our problems today, because you can't change anything around you. You can only change the way you respond to things. So we named our program 449 Recovery. So that was the next of where we came from. And we started doing partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient programming. If you don't know and you're not part of the recovery world, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But this is basically the timeline of someone's recovery. You are high, your parents or you call somebody and ask for help. And if you're willing to get help, you go to something called a detox res program. And that is a program that's typically dictated by insurance, giving you 5 to 10 days of detox, and then 20 to 40 days maximum of residential programming. That is what the insurance would deem as enough time to get sober. So you're doing 35 to 40 days. And what we found, especially when I was working at Ocean Hills Recovery, 30 days was never enough. You know, we needed people to be engaged for a minimum of 60 to 90 days to really get pulled away from the substance and really start working on what Rodney had explained to me as the mental health issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
You tried 30 days.
Right. It didn't work.
You
It's a Christian program.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so what we did was we focused a lot more on getting clients to come to us, not right out of detox. We didn't want to compete with Ocean Hills. We wanted to do something very different. So we became the first intensive outpatient program that offered housing along with our treatment. So it felt like residential treatment, but it was intensive outpatient and partial hospitalization. So the insurance companies were much more willing to pay for a lower level of care versus the higher level, $4,000 or $5,000 a day programs. They were coming to us and, at $1,000 a day, they're saving a ton of money by sending them to ILP. They can come for multiple months. Happy day. We did good. They did good. Everybody was happy. And we were getting a ton of people sober. So we have, we designed a 90-day program, so by doing that, we actually, we started out modestly, but we were the first program of our kind. And what we did was, we were renting houses, but not whole houses, sober livings that people owned, because we didn't have any sober livings of our own. And what they would do is, like, the first one was Laguna Beach Sober Living, right? And Laguna Beach Sober Living was charging us $2,000 a month per bed. Okay, $2,000 a month. It's a lot of money for sober living, but we paid that for our clients, and we just basically pay, out of the money that we make, for their care. We bundle it so that we can pay for the sober living. Back then we were allowed to. It's changed since, but that's how we did it. We were paying for them to stay with us. We would take the hit so that they could stay and have great success. So we would keep, Laguna Beach Sober Living very busy, very full. They opened more houses because of us. At $2,000 a head, they were making a ton of money every single month. And after about a year of seeing what we did, they were like, we can do that, And so they opened up their own program. They're called now SCRC, which is Southern California Recovery Centers. They became one of the biggest IOP programs. They outpaced us by about triple. They're massive. They help thousands of people every single year. And I guess it would upset a lot of people, but my partner and I were never upset about it. They actually poached a couple of our employees to become owners over there to literally copy what we were doing. And we saw it as a blessing. This is a blessing that we've gotten this model to work, and now other people are doing it. There was never a shortage of clients. You understand? We've never been short on clients. The reality is, the more people are doing this, the better.
You're not worried about the competition or not helping enough people. You're fine with the model growing and helping
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Right. And the funny thing about it is, when you're detox res, you're focused on like internet and driving people to your website. And you're paying tens of thousands of dollars a month on pay-per-click advertising so that someone that is fresh in addiction sees your ad at the top of the SEO and the pay-per-click campaign. So we never focused on that. That was never our focus. Our focus is on people that have already gone to treatment. So our marketing has been more, working with big treatment facilities nationwide. And when they're done their 30, 60, or 90-day program, they just refer them to us, right? And, intrinsically by nature, there is relapse involved in intensive outpatient programming. You've gone from a cocooned environment where you can't have a cell phone, internet access, or anything. You come to us, you have your cell phone, you have every internet access possible. You can walk out of the house in the sober living whenever you want, as long as you come back sober and not drunk. We're going to breathalyze you. We're going to UA test you. We do all that, but we're giving you a place where you can live your life while you're in recovery, so that when life throws curveballs at you, let's say something happens on a Tuesday night, that really spins you off as an addict, and you come into a group on Wednesday, you can pull your counselor aside, your therapist aside, the psychiatrist aside, and say, I had this issue happen, and we can help you overcome that. So you have tools in your belt when you're done our program to get sober. So after SCRC opened up, we had to obviously find another sober living, found another place called Donna's House. And they were a nice enough sober living. So we worked with them and we got a better deal. It was like $1,500 per bed. And so we're saving money there, and we filled them up tremendously, and they stayed with doing their program. We did our program for a while, and they had already started a detox res program. So they had already had a name called Pack Palms Recovery, and they decided to open an ILP too.
Okay.
And
Vito, the program is developing and expanding. I want to shift the focus a little bit from the program development to the treatment
right
for
right
the individuals,
right
and
okay,
and
absolutely.
the mental health piece.
Okay, the only
Yeah.
reason I was sharing that was because that same cycle happened 3 or 4 times.
Mm.
And because of 449 recovery, we've had so many programs open up in South Orange County that literally tens of thousands of people have been helped, because one
Wow.
guy, Rodney Robinson, my partner, got me sober, and we opened up a little tiny program that has turned into South Orange County. Whole cities are just tired of IOP programs around because there's so many now, but there's tons of people getting help. So let's fast forward to the therapy. When we first started, we had this idea in the mind of really helping the mental health aspect of the treatment. Problem was we didn't have the right staffing to do that. We needed more mental health clinicians. We needed more MFTs, less drug and alcohol counselors. And so we cycled out more of the counselors and brought in more mental health therapists. And as I said earlier, Savant, what happened was we were getting people sober, but we weren't emphasizing enough of the mental health issues. We weren't getting to what I consider, when you're in your addiction, there's a lot of smoke from your addiction. That smoke is caused by a fire that is your addiction, right? The turmoil, that's all smoke. The addiction is the fire. But what started the fire? What started the fire was the catalyst to the fire. And what I believe, and what this whole program believes, is the catalyst to the fire is the mental health issues that underlie the problem. And what we find with every client coming in here, about 95% of the clients that come in here have a mental health underlying issue: depression, stress, anxiety, PTSD, trauma. And so we engaged many more modalities of mental health treatment And we have mental health treatment now on a daily basis, in our group therapies and our one-on-one therapies, with both case managers and therapists, and a weekly visit from the doctor, to encourage strong mental health. Okay. And so in doing that, our success rate has gone up immensely, because we really feel like we're attacking what the problem is with every addict, and every addict has a hole in their soul that they're trying to fill with a substance, which is typically whatever drug or alcohol that they drink, right? So what we seek to do is fill the hole from that substance, from that mental health issue, in a healthy way, right? Really help get to the crux of the problem. The problem being, a lot of times deep rooted in their childhood. As I mentioned earlier, I exhibited addict behavior long before I ever touched a substance. I did, I lied, I manipulated, I did all that stuff. I was compulsive, and all that was long before I ever touched a drug. Many is the case of these addicts that are, I really truly believe have these characteristics, these personality disorders that need to be addressed and need to be helped, and oftentimes go undiagnosed until that catalyst starts a fire, which oftentimes is addiction.
Yeah. For you, it was the diet pills.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of opened
as
the door
innocently
there.
as that sounds, I just wanted to not be as heavy, which whatever, got me and my metabolism going, and got me open-minded to trying other substances. A lot of people innocently will just try marijuana, and what happens is, no matter what the substance is, it opens up something in your brain that says, you know what, I'm being satisfied in a way that is helping me to either forget or not think about for a little while these underlying issues that are plaguing me. I was a very insecure person as a youth, and I overcompensated by trying to be talkative and helpful and kind, and you know what I mean? Like, but the reality was, there were serious insecurities there, So when I started, doing other substances, it became very easy for me to become much more loquacious, much more happy and funny, and I just started to become, a person I wanted in my heart to feel like I wanted to be, because I was placating that issue, you know what I mean, that was plaguing me long before I ever realized I had an issue.
Yeah.
Mental health.
Yeah. It's that's tough when it feels like it's meeting that need for acceptance, or just increasing your confidence, and but it was destructive for you personally and your family. Can you say a little bit, Vito, about how addiction affects marriage and parenting?
Yes, I'd love to, because addiction, and I can only speak for myself, you know what I mean, and what I've seen at my facility.
Yeah.
Addiction is a hurricane that destroys everything in its path. So if you're married, you have kids, you have a girlfriend, you have a life partner. The problem is, you don't realize the destruction that you are creating all around you, because as an addict, all you're focused on is yourself and satisfying yourself and helping yourself, and you don't take the time to look around and see what you've done to your wife, the lack of attention you've given your kids, the lack of income that happens when you lose your job, or you stop going home at night because you have to stay in that mental state, because when you start your addiction, and I can say this is exactly my story and almost everybody that I've met since, you start smoking weed, let's say, it's always fun, right? It's a lot of fun. Marijuana, good time, right? And you start smoking weed once on weekends and maybe like throughout the weekend. And then eventually, only at night. And then eventually you start smoking habitually, right? Seen it 1,000 times, especially if you're an addict, and you have those mental health issues. But see, those fun times become fun times with problems. Eventually, you can't hold a job. You stop going to church. You stop talking to your wife the same way. You disrespect her. You ignore your responsibility as a father. And then, as you walk down that path, you've gone from fun to fun with problems to just problems. It just becomes problems. And what you're doing at that point is you are at that point just doing the drugs just to stay happy. You know what I mean? Like you have no more joy in your life.
Manage the pain of the problems, the
It's
stress
all
of all
been,
the problems.
It's all been taken away by your own doing. You know what I mean? And again, it started innocently enough as something that is filling something inside of you that you sometimes don't even realize you need. Mental health issues.
Yeah. Your program, the 449, it's you're getting through the detox, and then 60, 90 days to address those core mental health issues.
Yes.
So folks are doing individual counseling or group?
We actually do both. So on a weekly basis, clients will do the first month. It's basically a 3-month cycle, right? 90 days. The first 30 days, we have them in partial hospitalization level of care, which means they're at programming from 9 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. And they're doing 4 groups a day, right? And so they're doing group therapy 4 times, some mental health, some substance abuse, right? And they'll go through that 30 days, and every week they're going to meet with a case manager, which is like a drug and alcohol counselor, right? And every week they're going to meet with their therapist, which is an LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist. So they're going to meet with those 2 every week separately as well. And they're going to visit with the doctor every week to make sure that the mental health issues are being addressed with medication if needed. Of course, we want them to leave here ideally with no medications at all. But the reality is some people, the mental health issues don't just go away. You don't cure them. A lot of times it requires some type of maintenance of medications to keep them on the right path once we've found the right path for them. So they're here with us from 9 to 4. After the first 30 days, into the next 30 days, we go to what's called IOP 5, which is intensive outpatient, 5 days a week. So from that point, they actually are only with us from 9 to noon. And so at that point, we encourage them, once they're finished at noon, not to just go home to the sober living and play video games all day. We want them to get a job. We want them to go back to school. We want them to become what we feel are a productive member of society again. It's essential that they start interacting with the world the way they're going to when they leave us, so that when they come across a situation, they know how to deal with it. They've addressed it. They've dealt with it in the past. You know what I mean? So when they come across challenges, like I said, they'll have tools in their belt to deal with it because they've done it with us. After that second 30 days, the final 30 days, we actually go to IOP 3, which is intensive outpatient treatment, 9 to 12, 3 days a week, which affords them even more time to work a more full-time job. You know what I mean? And we're done by noon, so they can work mostly full-time jobs at that point. And they start becoming, independent. And, at that point, we start to begin the process of nudging them out of the nest, if you will, and becoming the person that we've always wanted them, and their parents and loved ones, wives and children have always wanted them to be. After addressing, like I said, through our 90 days, a lot of those mental health issues that have been that catalyst to the addiction all along.
Yeah, that's awesome. Help transitioning and helping them get their life back, or probably for some, like living a life they haven't lived before. If they've struggled throughout their life or early on.
Yeah, and I say it a lot. A lot of these people, when they get through our first 30 days, now they've got anywhere from 60 to 120 days sober at this point, depending on how long they went to the residential program. And they come to us and it's like time to find a job. They start making money. It's the first time in their lives as a 19-year-old that they've even had a job, or it's the first time they've been able to hold a job for more than a week or two, and it amazes them. It encourages them and it strengthens them and helps them to get the self-esteem back that was totally decimated while they were in their addiction. Because unfortunately, your self-esteem goes out the window very quickly when you fall into addiction, because even though you don't want to look at yourself, and oftentimes, a lot of addicts don't even like to look in the mirror for months at a time, because I could not look at myself. I could not stand the sight of myself. I disgusted myself.
Yeah.
I just couldn't stop.
That's painful. Yeah.
It was rough.
Yeah. Vito, thanks for laying that out for us. With the remaining time, I would like to ask you to speak to parents or family members, loved ones of someone who's maybe struggling with addiction, starting down that path, or maybe deep into it. What encouragement would you have for them? Listeners aren't all down in Southern California, so and not be able to access your treatment center. But what would you say to family members?
What I would say about addiction to every family member, and I've said it to every family member I've spoken to, every addict I've spoken to as well. Addiction is a family disease. Okay. It's not just the addict, sadly. And a lot of times it starts with the trauma and stuff in the home. The absent father or the absent mother or the absent both parents. My parents, they were never diagnosed as addicts. They never drank very much ever. They never did any drugs. But my parents were immigrants with a very immigrant work mentality. They were workaholics. Okay. I never saw my dad. He worked literally 14 to 16 hours a day. My mom had 3 jobs a lot of times. I was a latchkey kid, and so not being there, was the trauma for me, that started me on the lying and the manipulating and things like that. You guys have to realize, parents, that this is a family disease. And a lot of times, if the kid has already started maybe smoking marijuana or doing other substances, you don't realize that a lot of times your denial is enabling your loved one down the path. Your denial of them having a serious problem and still continuing to enable them by giving them a place to stay, giving them money, giving them all the stuff that they need to stay in their current state could actually, and I don't like to sound like this, but it could kill them. Today, it's very different than 12 years ago when I got sober. Today, we have a very serious opioid epidemic. It's not a joke. It is the most serious epidemic we face, far more than the pandemic that we face, believe it or not. There are much more people dying from addiction every single day than even COVID. Okay. And the problem with it is, you have these new substances that are more and more prevalent, like, fentanyl. A lot of clients try fentanyl one time and they overdose because it's 100 times stronger than heroin. You know what I mean? And they don't realize it at the time. I say to family members, you cannot encourage them by ignoring it. You cannot be in denial. You need to look at yourself and realize that sometimes you have to push the issue. You have to get an intervention if you need. You have to seek some professional help if you need. Don't try to do it alone if you don't feel you're comfortable doing it, but you cannot let things stay the same. You need to intervene. And if you're not the person to do it, there's always someone to call. We refer clients nationwide. And when people call 449 Recovery, we encourage them always to go to a detox res program. And we don't just send them to any program just because they call us. What we do is we actually do an assessment here and figure out what type of underlying issues are the problem first, and what type of substances that they're doing. And we will tailor the program we send them to across the country. And we just basically are like a hub, and we refer clients out to help, get them the best possible treatment. If there's eating disorders, we have special programs to send them to. If there's other mental health issues or lower level mental health issues, we take that all into consideration, and we will recommend the proper program for that individual, because we've dealt with so many different programs over the years. We just have a huge database of resources to help people, just to connect. So I would say, like, even if you call just 449 Recovery's main line, I'll give you a little shameless plug here. 449 Recovery's phone number is 855-449-4490. Pretty easy to remember, right? But you call us and say, hey, look, my son, daughter, loved one, myself, my wife, whoever has a problem, can you help? We don't seek to just bring you into our program. We will get you the help from someone who either takes your insurance, or if you don't have insurance, we'll get you somewhere that can do it, county programs or state funded programs, or just tons of resources out there. And most people, like, that have never been affected, like my parents, they had no idea how to find a treatment center. I literally went online and looked and found the cheapest place I could, and it just happened to be Ocean Hills Recovery. It happened to be where God wanted me, and that all worked out. But the reality of the fact is, a lot of people they're not armed with the tools they need to find the proper place. And by calling a professional, like someone like ourselves, we can guide you and direct you. And of course, there's never a fee. We really believe in giving back and helping people. Whether you eventually come to 449 or not, we get a satisfaction out of knowing that we're helping people get what they need and get to where they need eventually.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I'll put the information for 449 and the phone number in the show notes.
No, that's fantastic. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Vito, it's been great to catch up and just hear what you've been through and the work that you're doing to help so many people. And yeah, I hope this will be a great year for you and your family, and your treatment center. Any last thoughts?
Guys, I would just say, if you sat through this whole podcast, I would say thank you. I would say that, a lot of times, if you listen to everything I've said, if anything rings true, and you need help, I would encourage you to get on the internet and at least start the process. Don't stand pat. Don't think you can start tomorrow. If you yourself need help, or a loved one needs help, I encourage you to start the process immediately, because the way things are these days, we're not guaranteed a tomorrow.
Right.
And I too many people I know have gone away, and been with the Lord because they thought they'd get to the problem later, or it wasn't a big problem, because you don't know the whole story a lot of times if it's a loved one. And if it's yourself, you may not have been looking in the mirror and seeing just how bad it's really gotten. and you're in denial. So I would encourage you, if you sat through this podcast and it's anything at all has rung true to you, reach out and get the help that you may need. That's it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Vito. 2022, hopefully there's someone out there listening who needs to break through that denial, but maybe is just on the fence. Just encourage you to be brave, to be courageous, and break free and get the help that you need this year. So thanks again, Vito, for coming on.
I appreciate you so much. Thanks for what you do.